Good morning. Today we're going to do the Sicho of the Lubavitch Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, in Sefer Sichos, 5751, page 515. The Rebbe discusses many directives concerning the service of a Yid to bring the redemption and how one needs to prepare to redemption, being that we're now in the end of the time of the exile, Goyla, and holding very soon by the redemption. First of all, we have a response to those who wonder and are afraid from the campaign that every Yid must do and activities and accomplish that the redemption should come immediately. And being open people, they express in verbally their wonder and worry. When Mashiach will come immediately soon, what's going to be, they ask, with all the activities and things that they accomplished during many and many years in exile, the businesses that they built, the property that they acquired, the friends and connections, both amongst Jews and amongst nations of the world, Gentiles, that they have received, especially public activists, and etc., etc. The response on this is, there's nothing to be afraid, because redemption does not mean that it's going to be nullified the conduct of the world, the good things that were accomplished according to Torah during the exile. To the contrary, redemption, Geula, includes in it all good things of exile, of Goyla, in a manner that they are elevated to a situation of redemption, to their true advantage and completeness, through the fact that you reveal in them the Aleph, the master of the universe, the true goal in all of the activities during the time of exile, how all of this brings out the glory of God. And therefore, there's nothing, as a result, there's nothing to worry about the activities, even about permissive affairs that one has accomplished according to Torah during the time of the exile. To the contrary, from this we have the directive that every businessman, etc., has to search for ways how to reveal in his business affairs, etc., the glory of God, and utilize his businesses and properties and connections to increase in Torah and mitzvahs and commandments. From this it is also understood the directive on the other side, for those who think that the service of God, of redemption, constitutes with not having to do and negating the conduct of the world, that to the contrary, the redemption depends, dafke, in our deeds and our service of God during the time of the exile. And therefore, as the Mishnah says in the 3rd chapter of Pirkei Avos, of the chapters of ethics of our fathers, that one needs to look at 3 things. One has to realize that the world consists, his avodah in the world consists, his service of God in the world consists not only of himself and God, but also of the world, of transforming the world. The service of God to bring the redemption has to constitute in Sorisoi Melikim Vanoshim V'tucho, that one has mastered with angels of God and men and been able to make a dwelling in the lower worlds and prepare the world to the redemption. Indeed, in a manner of Sorisoi Melikim Vanoshim, to fight with and wage war against the concealment and hiddenness of the world. However, in a manner of vatuchol, of being able and accomplishing that the entire world should be malchusei v'rotzen kiblu aleim, should accept upon themselves the kingdom of God and King Mashiach of their own free will, beginning from his portion in the world, through increasing in fulfillment of the commandments with physical things, including and specifically the mitzvah, the commandment of charity, which is the basic component of the mitzvahs that have to do with action, that he takes from his physicality and from his richness with which God has blessed him, and helps another one, that by the other one there should also be food and garments, clothes, in a manner of l'chavod u'l'sifaras, glory and beauty, befitting the kingdom of priests, and similarly he helps out institutions of Torah and charity, etc. And likewise, also in a service in permissive concepts, so he does it in a manner of Kol Ma'asech L'Shem Shamayim, all his deeds are for the sake of heaven, and B'chol Drachecha De'eyu, in all of one's ways he knows God. And in addition, and this is also a basic thing, through spreading of Torah and Judaism and spreading of the wellsprings outwards, including and specifically to awaken Yidden, Jews, throughout the entire world, that they should increase even more in learning Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs, of commandments. And likewise also to publicize and reveal in the entire world Alufei Shalom, the master of the universe, including through influencing nations of the world concerning the fulfillment of the 7 commandments, of the 7 Noahide laws, and how they prepare to the situation of Vahoisa Lavaya Amlucha, that the kingdom should be to God. Which the 7 Noahide laws are: A, one cannot worship idols; B, one should not murder; C, one should not steal; D, one should not commit adultery; E, one should not blaspheme, should not curse out God. Number 6, that there should justice should be instituted. There should be a system of judges that and policemen that is certain that everybody is following the law. And the final law, these 6 were given to Adam Rishon, the first man who was created 5,771 years ago. And the final mitzvah was given to Noah following the flood in the year 1656. After the creation of the world, when man has deviated from their mission in the world, and they have transgressed the 7 Noahide laws, they have worshipped idols, committed adultery, was stealing and killing, murdering, and as a result, God brought the flood, a massive flood that wiped out practically all of mankind, animals and birds. And however, Noah was a righteous man. Noah was 10th generation from Adam. He was a righteous man, and God commanded him to build an ark, which is 300 cubits long, and 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits tall, and it has 3 floors. The bottom floor for waste, and the middle floor for animals, and the top floor for the human beings. 8 of them, Noah himself, his wife, and his 3 sons, Shem, Cham, and Yafes, and their wives. And then when they came out from the ark, and then God gave Noah the 7th law, which is he cannot eat, and Noah was also supposed to commanded to bring in 7 males and females from each pure animal and bird, and from the impure animals and birds, a male and female for survival of species purposes. When Noah came out of the ark, he built an altar for God, and he brought sacrifices from the remainder of the pure animals and birds. And then God gave him the 7th law, which is he cannot eat an animal or bird while it's still alive. So even an animal or bird that's died or been slaughtered, if there's a limb that had been severed, for instance an eye, a foot, a lung, or whatever limb that had been separated from the animal or bird while it's still alive, that limb is forever prohibited from being eaten. So these 7 laws are known as the 7 Noahide laws for 2 reasons. Number 1, the 7th one was given to Noah. Number 2, we all trace our genealogy all the way back to Noah, who's 10th generation, not merely to Adam, who's first. So the 3 sons of Noah are Shem, Cham, and Yafes. Shem settled in Asia, which is the reason that Jews who come out of Shem are referred to as Semitic. Cham settled in Africa, and Yafes in Turkey. And if we all kept the 7 Noahide laws, the world would be a much better place to live in. So according to what mentioned above, that Geula, redemption, elevates the concepts of exile themselves through making from them a dwelling in the lower worlds, till Dafke, the service of God during the exile, brings the redemption, it is understood that the concepts of the world themselves and the nations of the world themselves, even during the time of exile, are really helping the service of God to bring the redemption, as mentioned above. And the Rebbe adds that standing during the end of the era of the exile, close to the redemption, this help comes out even more revealed manner, as we see it in the latest generations specifically, and even more in the latest era, specifically in the very last days. In the previous generations, majority of Jews lived in countries where there were obstacles and blockages, preventions that didn't allow Yidden to serve God in general. And as the pasuk says in the end of the pasuk, the verse says in Menachem leisakum pa'amayim, that terrible things are not going to repeat themselves. However, in the latest generations, so majority of Yidden live in countries in which a kingdom of kindness governs, beginning from this country in which they are located. The majority of both in amount and in build of the Jewish people that helps Jewish people to achieve a inner redemption in their service of God, till they should do the service of God, which will bring the literal redemption from exile. And then the kingdom of kindness will also help Jews to return to Eretz Yisrael, as the language of the verse in Yeshaya, in the end of Isaiah, chapter 66, verse 20, that Goyim will bring along all of your brothers, your brethren, the Eden, the Jews. They'll bring it in different wagons and upon different animals, different vehicles, and they'll make sure that they arrive in Eretz Yisrael. And in the last year, we see how this attitude and approach to Jews has extended in many more countries, till even in that country of Russia, in which the USSR, in which till lately there were limitations concerning the freedom of Jewish people, their service in Torah mitzvahs, and also concerning their exit from that country. So their attitude has been transformed now in the year 5751, that they allow Jews to fulfill Torah mitzvahs, and they let Yidden out of there without the limitations of once upon a time, and to the contrary, they even help the Yidden, assist the Yidden to travel to and move to the Holy Land, which is a minute example of the preparation. It's some type of preparation to the help that the nations of the world are going to help that Yidden, that Jews should exit the exile and go into the Holy Land in the true complete redemption. In addition to the direct help of nations of the world to Yidden, to Jews, there are also concepts in which we see how the nations of the world themselves do activities of good and kindness, which is even more revealing how there is a owner to this capital, to this world, as a preparation to V'hoisela Havaya Hamlucha, that God should have the kingdom in the true complete redemption, not the way it was once. That after the Jewish nation, although Atem Hama'at Mikol Amim, you are the minority of all nations, completed actually the goal of dwelling in the lower worlds, and certain of the regimes of nations of the world conducted themselves in a most sadistic manner one to the other, and they busied themselves mainly in the benefit of themselves or in conquering other countries, etc. Amongst the revealed aspects that were added in these very days, where we see how the world, the nations of the world, are preparing and paving the way to redemption, it is through the concept of charity and education, two basic concepts in the dwelling of the world, which L'Shevas Yitzhara, God has populated, has formed it in order that it should be populated. It is known and famous throughout all news outlets concerning the events in the latest days, that this country, which is based on charity and kindness as known, utilized her strong power to help out and save people in the most distant place in the world, very far from this country, even though that through this there doesn't come a direct benefit to the citizens of this country. This country sent a multitude of people and soldiers from its army to help out the refugees in those places, together with food and clothing and medicine, instead of using the airplanes for concepts of conquest, and instead of using the food and the clothes for the citizens of this country, we use it to save unlucky people, especially small kids, from cold till from the opposite of life. That with this we see the compassion of the citizens of this country when they heard and saw how people suffer. So although they are not their relatives, and they never had a connection with them, so this country was awakened to help them in befitting of the Shita, of the mission of this world, in concepts of charity, that we help out people throughout the entire world, and we don't even wait that they should ask for help. As soon as they need it, we send it. Likewise, it is also known, similarly it is also known that in the latest days, the leader of this country came out with a specific directive and announcement concerning the education of youth, and befitting to this, that in the beginning of the leadership of President Bush, he announced that his goal is to be remembered as the education president, due to the activities, the great changes and good that he is going to conduct to strengthen the education in this country, to tell them that there's a God that created this universe 5,771 years ago. The accomplishment in the latest events, amongst others, is understood simply that although by Yidden it is not a new thing, because by them it was always the conduct according to Torah and mitzvahs and concepts of charity and education, etc., it is even more revealing how there is an owner to this capital, to this universe, which is the true foundation for charity and education. I've spoken many times that true success in education depends upon the knowledge and recognition of the child and the creator of the world and his leader. And this all is in addition to many more concepts that happen in divine providence on a daily basis, both concerning the general state of the universe, and also concerning each and every individual in his specific concepts. And the goal in this is that this should even more reveal how the world is helping and assisting to make a dwelling in the lower worlds and bring the redemption, including the fact that in the last week was found in a most the furthest corner in the world, in Australia, they found precious stones and gems through the blessing of God, which is an example to what the Pasuk says in the Parshas Vayakel, that the Nesim, which is translated as the leaders, they brought the Shoam stones and filling stones for the apron, Oifod, which was the apron of the Kohen Gadol, and the Choshen, the breastplate, and which are the part of the Bigdei Kahuna, the garments of the high priest. And the Targum Yonason says that Nesim is a reference not to people, but it's a reference to the clouds, as we find elsewhere in Tehillim that the clouds are called Nesim, that the clouds brought these gems which are not located naturally in the desert, which is where they built the Mishkan. And the goal of this is that it's utilized to adorn, for adornments of a bride, to add in charity as mentioned above. The conclusion of what's said above concerning action is the redemption comes after through the service of God during the exile, of revealing the master of the universe in the Goyla, in the exile, such that this generation, the last generation of exile, will become the first generation of redemption. And God helps that we see in the latest events in the world how the world itself is assisting and leading to redemption. And simply it means, as mentioned above, that every Jew has to increase in our deeds and our service of God in general, which bring the redemption, including specifically, as mentioned in the previous talk, in learning of Torah and the concepts of redemption, in both in the written Torah, which all books are full of this concept of redemption, and the oral Torah, Mishnah, Gemara, Midrashim, etc. And in this itself, we have to increase according to the directive of Pesach Sheni, when God said for those people who are impure and they were not able to make the Korban Pesach during the second year, the sacrifice of Passover, they weren't able to bring it because they weren't pure. And he said that there's no such a thing that it was totally lost. It's nishtaken verfallen. That even though they weren't able to do it in the original time, they can still make up. So one has to make a righteous accounting, whether one corrected and completed his service of God in the past the way he needs to, or he can still increase in it. And we have in this the directive and the giving of the power that even if something was lacking, it's nitaken verfallen, it's not too late, and we can always still correct. And in addition, and the basic thing is that it should be revealed and corrected all concepts that it seems that they were lost, or maybe they were indeed lost in exile, including those that were lost in a good way, being above the revelation, the definition of revelation, the revelation of the very end of exile, that the Gemara says, the Zohar says in Zohar Chodesh Breishis, page 8a, that liba lepuma legalia, that kaviyachol, the Eibishter himself, his heart doesn't reveal to his mouth. In other words, the mouth of the Eibishter refers to the speech of the Eibishter. When the Eibishter created, when God created the world, when God said, "Let light be developed," that's when light was developed. As Rav Sadi Goin points out, that light that was created on the first day, the beginning of the fourth day, which begins from Tuesday night, is when God subdivided it into the sun and the rest of the stars. So, Mashiach, our righteous Mashiach, who comes behesach hadas, when we think off of it, it only comes in a way of finding, as it says in the Pasuk, Motzasi David Avdi, I have found David my servant, which is said in the 89th chapter in Tehillim, which is what Chassidim the world over and the Jews the world over recited during 20 years ago when the Rebbe said the Sicho, and this is revealed in the following Mizmar, in the Mizmar Tzadik, number 90, V'hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, Masi Yadeinu Keinu Aleinu, Masi Yadeinu Keinaneu, that the pleasantness of God, our Lord, should be upon us, and the handiwork of our hand should be established upon us, and our handiwork will establish the God in the third Beis HaMikdash, the true complete redemption, the redemption of all Jews with our youth and our elders, our sons and our daughters. So in actual means that those who want to send money for charity, for Simchas Chassan V'Kala, for bride and a groom to be married, those who need assistance, or those who want to send for education of kids in Lubavitch Yeshiva, should send it to 701 Crown Street, and we will bring the revelation of King Mashiach speedily nowadays.